Hello, I'm Mike and this is Will. We are the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
I'm bringing issue 14 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine today. This issue came with 2 new base paints, Rakarth Flesh and Screamer Pink. So we'll be adding those to our models, and then in today's game we'll be learning about deployment, infiltration and deep striking. So first up in the issue we have our painting guide where we're adding our 2 new colours to the models. For the Marines, Rakarth Flesh is used on all of the parchment for their purity seals. It's a relatively thin paint, so you will need multiple thin coats as usual. And also on the captain there's the inside of his cloak and a little scroll-like effect on one of his shoulder pads. And we're also adding Screamer Pink for the wax on those purity seals, just to add a little pop of colour to contrast with all the blue and black. And you can see the completed Marines there. And for the Tyranids, we're just adding Screamer Pink just to the tongues on the Tyranid Prime. Any of the models that have their tongues hanging out. Obviously not all of them have their mouths open, so you can just ignore those. And then some more lore. We have background on the Inquisition. The Inquisition is a feared organisation within the Imperium, and individual Inquisitors are some of the most powerful individuals within the Imperium, with the power to muster huge armies or even to condemn certain worlds to death if they deem it necessary by ordering exterminatus. Some Inquisitors are more puritanical, put entire planets to the torch at the slightest hint of heresy, whereas more radical ones will actually hire alien mercenaries or even convert with demons to achieve their goals. But they're all united by ruthlessness and their desire to defend the Imperium. And you can see the Inquisitorial rosette there, which is their badge of office, although some Inquisitors are more surreptitious about how they display it, whereas others will wear it as their heraldry for all to see. And you can see 3 of the major Ordos, along with models from each. You have the Ordo Malleus, which is responsible for fighting chaos and demons, the Ordo Xenos, which is hunting for alien threats, and the Ordo Hereticus, which deals with hidden threats amongst the Imperium itself, like witches and dangerous cults and so on. And then background on the Oath of Moment. So this is a vow that a Space Marine will take. They will vow that some goal will be completed, even to the cost of the Marine's own life, as a matter of personal honour. So this often leads Marines to seek out the mightiest foes to fight on the battlefield, and often when an oath of moment is taken and sworn, it will be witnessed by the Marines' peers, his battle brothers, so that they can record his deeds if he doesn't return. And then some background on the Third Tyrannic War. This time, the Hive Fleet Leviathan invaded the Blood Angels' homeworld of Baal, although the Inquisitor Cryptman ordered several worlds preemptively destroyed to deny their biomass to the Tyranids. And the Hive Fleet invaded Baal, and it was only the intervention from the Indomitus Crusade that eventually stopped the tide of Leviathan, although all of the chapters derived from the Blood Angels came to their aid as well. And in fact, the bloodshed on Baal was so great that it allowed demons of Khorne, led by the demon lord Kabander, to break free from the warp and arrive on the surface of Baal, and they started fighting the Tyranids and the Marines alike, sort of ironically coming to the aid of the Blood Angels. And we have a bit there on Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels, who is the oldest living Space Marine who is not interred in a dreadnought. He led the last of the Blood Angels in a final assault and personally slew the Swarm Lord as well. We'll now hand you over to Will, where we'll learn about deployment and some unique quirks that brings.
In this issue, we're learning about the rules for deployment. Obviously, deployment is a thing that happens at the start of the game when you set your models up on the battlefield, and how that happens is usually dictated by the scenario, but there's a general method that is commonly used, and indeed will be used in most of our Combat Patrol games, which is detailed here. So, as you'll see on this map here, there are 2 coloured zones which represent the deployment zones for the 2 sides, which is where their models may deploy, and that's anywhere within 6 inches of the short board edges. This is in fact the deployment zones that we'll be using in our game today, but the game you'll be playing and the games going forward in Combat Patrol will always mark out exactly what the deployment zones are for that particular battle. And when deploying, you and your opponent alternate deploying units one at a time, so one player places one, then another player places one, and so forth. And typically to decide who deploys first, you roll off with your opponent, and whoever wins deploys a unit first. It mentions here that some missions may talk about attackers and defenders when detailing the rules for deployment, but we'll learn about that later when it comes up. And then there's also a bit about who gets the first turn, and typically you'll roll off with your opponent again, and whoever wins the roll off has to take the first turn of the game. And over the page we have some tips for deployment, some general considerations when deploying your models that will become second nature eventually, but it's always useful to have advice if you're starting out. So the first thing is consider threat ranges of enemy units, which would typically be the distance they can move plus the range of their weapons, or if they're really fast you might want to consider that they might be able to move and charge you in one move. You might want to deploy units you don't want to be attacked out of that distance. Also, if you have an objective in or near your deployment zone that you can take at the start of the game by deploying a unit on it, then it's always a good idea to do that. And finally, it's worth considering which enemy units you will be deploying your units opposite on the other side of the board, because some units will match up better against others. So in this example, the Infernus Marines are an ideal counter to the Tyranid Termagants. So if the Termagants have already been deployed, then deploying the Infernus Marines across from them, where they're going to be able to go the shortest distance to attack them, is probably a good move. And some units have special rules that they use when being deployed, and two that we learn about here are Infiltrators and Deep Strike. So first, Infiltrators, it represents units that are particularly sneaky or might take up a position on the battlefield before the fighting starts, such as the Von Ryan's Leapers. As you'll see on their datasheet, they have the Infiltrators rule. And such units, when they're deployed, they don't need to be deployed in your deployment zone. They can be deployed anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone and 9 inches away from any enemy models. So in this example, the Von Ryan's Leapers have been placed holding the objective in the middle of the board, because they don't have to be in their own deployment zone. Although it does give you a note of caution that if in this example the Space Marines are able to go first, that does place the Von Ryan's Leapers in a vulnerable position. And then we have Deep Strike, which allows units to arrive in the middle of the battle in a decisive position to swing the course of the game. And 4 units we've got so far that have this rule on their data sheets are the Captain and Librarian in Terminator armour, the Terminator Squad, and the Winged Tyranid Prime. The Space Marine units being able to deploy by a teleport, whereas the Winged Tyranid Prime can fly in and land where required. And when you have a unit with Deep Strike, you must declare before you deploy any units which units you're holding in reserves to use Deep Strike, and these units are not deployed in the deployment step that we talked about before. Instead, you may deploy them at the end of any of your movement phases, placing them on the battlefield anywhere more than 9 inches from any enemy units, and not on the first turn. That unit cannot move any further in that movement phase, but from then on can shoot and charge normally. And then we have our game fittingly called Deep Strike. The Space Marines in this game have the Captain in Terminator armour, 5 Infernus Marines, and 2 of the Terminators. Doesn't say which ones here, but we'll see over the page which ones it means. And it says you must deploy the Captain using the Deep Strike rule in this game. You also have the option to deploy the Terminators in Deep Strike, but you don't have to if you don't want to. The Tyranids have 5 Barb Gaunts, 3 Von Ryan's Leapers, and 10 Termagants. And it gives you a reminder that the Von Ryan's Leapers can deploy anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches from enemy models using the Infiltrators rule. And then we score victory points in the game as follows. We get 5 for controlling 1 objective, 5 for controlling 2 objectives, and 5 for controlling more objectives than the opponent. And here is that battlefield that we looked at earlier, where the deployment zones are 6 inches from the short edge of the battlefield, Space Marines on the right, Tyranids on the left. There are 2 pieces of terrain in the centre of the board, and 4 objectives, 1 in each deployment zone, and then 2 near the terrain features in the centre. And in this game we'll be rolling off to see who gets the first turn, but in their example the Tyranids have won the first turn, and there's an example of the turn here which goes over some of the rules we've learnt previously, so I won't cover that in any detail. But there are a couple of tips, such as not worrying too much about the Von Ryan's Leapers getting the charge, because fights first means they always strike first, and that you can use their infiltratability to take an objective early in the game. And the example shows that the 2 Terminators it wants are the Sergeant and 1 of the Marines with Stormbolter and Power Fist. And then the Space Marines turn, where it gives some more hints as before. And remember, of course, that the Captain cannot arrive from Deep Strike in turn 1, so you have to do without him until turn 2 at the earliest. And then on the final page we have our victory outcomes, so you can have a look at those if you want to, but we will set up the board and get into the game. So here's our battlefield set out without any models on it yet, but you can see the terrain in the centre there, and there are 4 objectives, 1 in the top left corner, 4 in the bottom right corner, and 2 and 3 in the middle. So we need to roll a dice each, and whoever wins deploys a unit first. Well, I've rolled a 6, we've both rolled a 6, so we'll have to try again. This time I have 1, so I deploy a unit first. And I've chosen to deploy the Infernus Squad, and as you can see from the range ruler, they are no more than 6 inches on from the short edge of the battlefield, so they're in my deployment zone. But as it happens, with the position of Objective 3, they are actually also in range of that at the start of the game, so I'll take that at the start, which will be handy.
Well, I've deployed the Termagants first, and like the Marines, I've deployed just within 3 inches of Objective 2 and within the deployment zone.
And then I've deployed the 2 Terminators, and they are within 6 inches of their table edge and holding Objective 4. But that's actually me finished, because the Captain, as it said, has to deploy in reserve to come in via Deep Strike later. So it doesn't count as a deployment choice, because you have to make that decision before deployment. So we'll just deploy the rest of the Tyranids and show you what that looks like.
And then my second deployment pick is the Barb Gaunt, so I'm going to deploy all around Objective 1. And my Von Ryan's Leapers I can deploy pretty much anywhere on the board, or at least halfway up the board, but I'm going to be a bit more conservative and deploy them just outside my deployment zone behind the terrain, just so they don't get roasted by the Infernus Marines. I could deploy them further up and take a risk and hope I win the turn roll off, but I think I'm okay with letting the Marines come to me.
And there's a look at the board from overhead, so you can see where all those units are in relation to each other. But now we need to roll off again to see who gets to go first, so whoever wins this roll off must take the first turn. We've drawn again on the first attempt. But this time I have 1, so I will be going first. So we'll be on to Space Marines turn 1. So in my command phase, I immediately score 10 victory points because I hold 1 objective and I also hold 2 objectives for 5 each. I don't hold more than the Tyranids at this time. And then in my movement phase, I've actually just shuffled the Infernus Marines slightly to their left, so they're still holding objective 3, but they're a little bit closer to the Terminators. Basically, if I move up, they won't be in range to shoot anything, and they will be charged by the Von Ryan's Leapers and probably killed, so I don't want that to happen. And the Terminators are going to stay still because they need to hold objective 4, and they are in range to shoot something. And remember, the Captain cannot arrive from Deep Strike in turn 1, but in the shooting phase, the Terminators are the only unit in range. They're going to shoot at the Termagants. So we've just got the 4 shots from the 2 Stormbolters at this range, which will be hitting on 3s, 2 hits, and wounding on 3s. 1.
With a 5+ save. Failed. Lose a Termagant.
But that'll be the end of my turn, so we'll be on to Tyranid's turn 1.
So in my movement phase, the Barb Gaunts have moved up so they can all see an Infernus Marine. The Von Ryan's Leapers are coming around to go into the middle to try and contest Objective 3, and also to make it harder for the Captain to come in near the Barb Gaunts, and the Termagants have moved just so they can all see a Infernus Marine as well and shoot at them. So 9 Termagants means 9 shots hitting on 4s, getting 4, and wounding on 3s, getting 2 with no AP.
2 3+ saves, we're fine.
And 5d6 shots from the Barb Gaunts. Oh, wow, that's a good roll. That's 25 shots. So 25 from the roll, plus 1 each for shooting a unit of 5 or more models with a blast weapon, means I get 30 shots. So I'll do 2 batches of 15. First batch, and these are hitting on 4s because I moved. First batch gets 8 hits. So 17 hits in total, wounding on 3s.
That was 9 wounds with a 3+ save. We have failed 4, so we lose 2 Infernus Marines. And we're going to take away the ones closest to the Von Ryan's Leapers to try and make their charge slightly harder.
We measured and we are still just within 8 inches of the Infernus Marines for the Von Ryan's Leapers, so when they charge they will need a 7. They only get 5, which is a failed charge.
But that will be the end of the Tyranid turn, so we'll be on to Space Marines turn 2. I score another 10 victory points because the objective control has not changed since last turn, and the Infernus Marines are still above half strength, so they don't need to take a battle shock test. And then in my movement phase, the Infernus Marines have moved, getting 2 of them on the objective, and more importantly taking a bit of cover from the Barb Gaunts, force at least 1 of them to move and not get their heavy rule if they want to all shoot at them. And the Terminators have spread out so that the Sergeant is still on objective 4, but the other one has moved forward, so he's within 12 inches of the Termagants just to get a couple more shots. Fortunately, I do have to still hold objective 4, which is a little bit inconvenient. And then at the end of the movement phase, the Captain has arrived from Deep Strike, so he is just over 9 inches away from the lead Von Ryan's Leaper, because he has to deploy anywhere on the board, but more than 9 inches away from an enemy model. That actually leaves him with relatively little option, because the Tyranids cover a lot of the board. He can't really get close to the Barb Gaunts. Here he is on objective 3. But we do have some shooting to do. We'll do the Terminators firing at the Termagants, because that's the only target they can see. And we have 6 shots now, because one of them did get within 12 inches. On 3s, 5 hits, wounding on 4s. 3s actually, but 4 6s will do the job. That's 4 wounds.
5+ saves. Made none of them, so 4 dead Termagants. And I'll take 4 away from the front of the unit, just in case the Infernus Marines are going to shoot their flamers at them.
That does indeed mean that only 1 Infernus Marine is in range of the Termagants. That one will shoot at the Termagants, but the other 2 will shoot at the Von Ryan's Leapers. So I have 1 shooting at the Termagants, d6 automatic hits, 6. Wounding on 3s, 4.
5 pluses, made 2, so 2 more dead.
And then 2d6 shots at the Leapers. 6, automatically hitting, wounding on 4s. 5.
4+ saves. Ooh. Bit more box. Saved 3, so I'm going to put the wounds on the one in the front.
Yeah, so that means if the Captain shoots at them and does a wound, it'll kill the front one, who's the one who's within charge range, and we don't really want that. So the Captain can see the Termagants through the gap. So 2 shots with his Stormbolter hitting on 2s. They both hit, they wound on 3s, they do.
5s. Save neither, we've got 1 Termagant left.
And then in the charge phase, the Captain will declare a charge on the Von Ryan's Leapers. Because he deployed more than 9 inches away, as per the Deep Strike rule, that means he needs to roll a 9, because an 8 will not be enough to get him within 1 inch. But of course he does get to reroll if he fails, thanks to Unstoppable Valor. Oh, we got an 8 on the first attempt. Try again. No, a 6. So the Captain is not making a charge. I'm not going to charge the Infernus Marines in because the Von Ryan's Leapers will have strikes first and probably just kill them, most of them, before they do get to do anything. So I'll leave it there for my turn, and we'll be on to Tyranid's turn 2.
So I'll still hold objective 2, because one of the leapers is in range, meaning I'll go up to 20 victory points as well. But I do have to make a battle shock test for the remaining Termagant. Oh, with an 11 he's okay, I think.
Yeah, leadership 8, I think, on Termagants.
In my movement phase, the Von Leapers are actually going around to engage the Terminators, because with 3 Leapers there's 2 OC to... well, there's only 1 Terminator on the objective, so hopefully I'll be able to take objective 4, and that might lure the captain away. Whereas the remaining Termagant has moved so that he's at least obscured by the terrain from the Infernus Marines on the captain, so he's not going to get shot immediately. And the Barbgaunts at the top I've shuffled around a bit just so that all of them can see the Infernus Marines. So I'll do the Barbgaunt shooting first. 5d6 shots on the Infernus Marines. So that's going to be 14. No bonus shots from Blast anymore. 14 shots hitting on 4s because we moved. 4 hits. On here. Winning on 3s, getting 1.
1 save, we succeed.
Termagant shot is going to shoot the Terminators because they're the only target. He hit. Wounds on a 4. Oh, wounded.
2+ save. Oh no! Terminator takes a wound. Put that wound on the Sergeant. It is the one holding the objective, but if the Von Leapers make their charge, they'll be able to take the objective anyway by getting all 3 of them on objective 4.
So in the charge phase, the Von Leapers are going to charge the Terminators. Technically I can't fail, but I will roll because I want to actually get around to the Sergeant so that I can take the objective. Now they get an 11, which is easily enough. So they're all going to go around the first Terminator so that they can attack the Sergeant. And if they do kill the Sergeant, that will mean the other Terminator will be out of combat, which I don't necessarily want because it means you can go off after objective 2, but we'll have to make do.
Even if the Sergeant doesn't die, the other Terminator can't get on the objective though, he doesn't have enough movement.
So we've got 18 attacks hitting on 3s, 16 hits, wounding on 4s because strength 5.
9 wounds with an AP of -1, so 9, 3+ saves. Oh, he actually failed 4 of them, so not only does the Sergeant die, but the other one is down to 1 wound remaining as well. Now, I don't think it's been covered by the magazine yet, but just to show you, this Terminator is no longer within an inch of the Von Leapers and didn't make a charge move, so can't actually be picked to fight, so doesn't get to fight back. Although that's not too bad, because it means he's also not going to be tied up next turn.
Yeah, I could consolidate into him, but he'd just get to attack, and I think he probably would kill one of them, so I think I'd rather keep all 3 of them alive.
But that will be it for Tyranid's turn 2, so we'll be on to Space Marines turn 3. In my command phase, I only gain 5 victory points because I now only hold 1 objective. The Terminator does not have to make a battle shock test because his unit only started with 2 models, and 1 model is not below half of 2 models, so at least I don't have to worry about that. The lone Terminator is going to ignore the Von Leapers and trudge towards objective 2. If I can charge that Termagant, I can probably take the objective. The captain's coming towards objective 4 because someone's got to deal with these Leapers, otherwise they'll just continue to be annoying. One of the Infernus Marines is still holding objective 3, but the other 2 have moved further towards the Leapers as well. And I think everything is going to have to shoot the Leapers. I can't shoot that Termagant because if I do, the Terminator can't charge it. So we'll do the Terminator first, shooting backwards. 4 shots on 4s because of stealth, so that's 2 misses. Wounding on 5s, which is 1.
With a 4+ armour save, which he made.
The same thing from the captain, but hitting on 3s this time. So 3 hits. Looking for 5s, nothing. And 3d6 shots from the Infernus Marines. 8. Wounding on 4s. Only 3.
3 4+ saves. Made 2, failed 1. Probably the best outcome because it kills this wounded Leaper, making the captain's charge harder, but none of the others are wounded.
Then we're on to the charge phase, where the captain will declare a charge first into the Von Leapers. And he gets to reroll if he fails. Well, a 4 is definitely not enough, so we'll try again. Getting a 5, that will also not be enough, so the captain's not moving. And then we'll do the lone Terminator into the lone Termagant. 5? Don't know, we'll have to see. Well, that was enough to get the Terminator within 1 inch of the Termagant, and also onto objective 2. So then I will pick the Terminator to fight as the only unit that is in melee, and made a charge. Getting 3 attacks that hit on 3s with his Power Fist. Getting 2, and then wounding on 2s, and I only need to get 1 of these. Yes, double 6. The Termagant is splatted. And then the Terminator will consolidate, so we're getting closer to the Von Leapers, which were the closest unit. I'm staying on objective 2 and getting out of line of sight of the Barbgaunts. So that will be the end of my turn. On to Tyranid's turn 3.
So my only movement is going to be the Von Leapers. We're going to abandon objective 4 because the captain's definitely going to come steaming in the next turn if I stay there. So we're going to go after that Terminator because he's only on 1 wound and I can take back objective 2. And the Barbgaunt's going to stay where they are because they can all see that Infernus Marine at the back, so I don't need to move and still get my maximum number of shots. And
Tyranid scored 10 points because they held objectives 1 and 4 in the command phase.
So my only shooting is the Barbgaunts, who are going to shoot at the Infernus Marines. 5d6 shots. 15 shots hitting on 3s because they didn't move.
And they have the heavy rule.
It's 11 hits, wounding on 3s. Ugh, 3 wounds.
3 plus saves. Oh, failed 2 though, so we do lose another Marine.
And then in the charge phase, the Von Ryan Sleepers will charge the Terminator. They're in with a 7. So they're just going to go around the Terminator, so they're both on the objective. 12 attacks hitting on 3s. That's 8 hits, wounding on 4s. Ooh, 6 wounds at AP -1.
So the Terminator needs to pass all of his 6 3 plus armor saves. No, failed 2. Terminator is killed. But that will be the end of the Tyranid turn. We'll be on to Space Marines turn 4. We do need to make a battleshock test with the Infernus Marines because there are only 2 of them left. Their leadership is 6+. And we rolled a 7, so they're okay. And I only gained 5 victory points because I only held objective 3, so it's 30 to 30, but the Tyranids have a 1-turn advantage, essentially. And then the 2 Infernus Marines are going to move towards the Barb Gaunts. Pretty much have to, I think, kill all the Barb Gaunts and take them off objective 1, and the captain has to make a charge into the Leapers and take objective 2 from them, or at the very least stop the Tyranids holding it. So the Infernus Marines will start off by shooting at the Barb Gaunts. And they get 7 automatic hits, which wound on the 3s. Getting 5.
4 plus saves. Made 4.
Only 1 wound. The captain can't see the Leapers yet, so he's going to have to fire at the Barb Gaunts as well. Only 2 shots at this range on 2s, yes, and 4s, nothing. And the captain needs to make we think we measured it's a 9-inch charge to get himself onto objective 2. So he needs a decent roll. Well, a 4 is definitely not it. Let's try with the re-roll. No, a 6. So the captain stays where he is. And I think that'll actually be the end of the game. There's no point playing out any further turns because the Tyranids in their command phase will gain the maximum of 15 victory points because they hold 2 objectives, which is more than the Space Marines, taking them up to 45. And then the Space Marines are only on 1 objective, so the maximum they can score in my final command phase is 5. So that will be a Tyranids victory in this game, and we'll recap that for you now. So that was the game for issue 14 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine. How did you think that went?
Pretty well, to be honest, although I guess I would have hoped to not lose on my turn against so early, but the Leapers being able to distract the captain away from the Barb Gaunts worked out very well, I think. Although, to be honest, I think it was more that I was very lucky that he failed all of his charge rolls.
Yeah, he didn't roll very well for charges, but they were all reasonably long, and the reason for that is because your movement with the Leapers won you the game. They were essentially just really annoying, but also something I couldn't ignore. I think probably what I should have done, actually, is when you moved them onto Objective 4, I probably should have actually advanced the captain and sent him after the Barb Gaunts and just ignored the Leapers. Although I think that might have ended up having the same outcome, because the Leapers probably would have just killed the Infernus Marines then instead, and I still would have only held 1 objective.
Yeah, 2 Leapers could probably at least kill some of the Marines.
And with both of us starting with 2 objectives each, it meant that once you got the lead, I was always going to struggle to catch up because your units were much faster than mine. I maybe should have deployed the Terminators where the Infernus Marines were and vice versa, because that way the Terminators would have been a slightly tougher target for the Barb Gaunts shooting. Although I didn't know where you were going to put the Barb Gaunts at that point, because the only thing you had on the board when I deployed the Terminators was the Termagants. But then the Infernus Marines would have been stuck in the corner instead. It's a bit of a disadvantage having to hold 2 objectives when I don't have a long-range shooting unit.
I guess it's the fact that I have an extra unit on the board, potentially in range to charge. If I deployed the Leapers further up and gone first, I would have instantly charged the Infernus Marines, and then you would have had to wait a turn still to get the captain in.
Yeah, actually, by going first, I had a chance. At least if you gone first, it would have been very difficult. Although it would, of course, have been a risk to deploy the Leapers further forward, because if I'd gone first, then I probably would have just charged them with the Terminators or something. And yeah, the captain just never got to do anything because he's just a bit slow. And that is obviously a downside of units having Deep Strike, is that you can't deploy them within 9 inches, and if you put them in the wrong place, they may end up out of position for the rest of the game. So although it can allow you to make a decisive impact by bringing in some units, you have to bring them in the right place, and your opponent can be clever and move things up so that they forced you away from things they don't want you to arrive near or charge. The Von Ryan's Leapers being forward meant the captain had a limited area to deploy, and he ended up deploying a bit too far away from things.
And on a board this size, the captain's got a very big base, so with a Von Ryan's Leaper right in the middle of the board, it actually limits where he can go. Whereas the Winged Tyranid Prime, with his 12-inch move, I think you'd have to be quite as careful with. And the big issue with Terminators is that they are quite slow. You were given the option to deep strike them, although I don't think that's a good choice, because I could potentially, if I went first, get 15 victory points straight away.
Yeah, we will probably see in later games that the Terminators, when you have the full squad arriving from deep strike, somewhere on the board can make a pretty big impact, because they have to be more than 9, but they can arrive within 12, which is obviously rapid fire range for their storm bolters, which is a lot of firepower, and they're also a unit you have to deal with. And then obviously infiltrate, there's not really much more to say than was covered in the tutorial anyway. It can be a huge benefit, but you do sometimes have to be careful that you end up deploying in range of the enemy army.
But it is useful for helping take objectives early on, or just you can hide a unit like the Von Ryan's Leapers somewhere, so it'll help screen the parts of the board for deep strikers, and it stops enemy units going there as well.
And more generally, considerations when deploying, you want to make sure that things that have effects that benefit nearby units, you want to ideally deploy them near the units you want them to affect. It's sort of fairly obvious, really, but it's easy to forget that sometimes in the heat of the moment. And also, as we get a bit more terrain, hopefully we'll see that deploying on or near terrain or behind terrain is usually a good idea, especially if you're facing things with strong shooting. But anyway, I think that'll do for this episode and this issue of the magazine, so let us know what you thought below. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. We've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.